Part 2, what she carried shocked everyone today. She said softly, "I think it is time for you to see what I carried all this way." The news spread through the checkpoint faster than anyone expected. Not because soldiers were ordered to gather. Because curiosity moved on its own. By mid-morning, several men found reasons to remain near the headquarters building. Some carried paperwork they did not need. Others lingered beside trucks that no longer required attention. Nobody wanted to admit it openly, but everyone was waiting for the same moment. Captain Michael Carter stood beside the desk as Anna carefully lifted the bundle from the cot. Morning sunlight entered through the window, illuminating the worn gray fabric. For the first time since her arrival, she did not hold it quite so tightly. Not because it mattered less. Because she had finally reached the place she had been searching for. Private Daniel Harper entered quietly and closed the door behind him. He took a position near the wall. The room fell silent. Anna rested the bundle on the desk between them. Her fingers moved slowly across the blanket. Every motion carried purpose. Every fold seemed familiar. Carter noticed that her hands no longer trembled from exhaustion. They trembled from emotion. Whatever was about to happen mattered deeply to her. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Anna took a slow breath. "The woman from the church told me that if I succeeded, people would understand why it had to survive." Carter said nothing. He simply nodded. Anna looked down at the blanket one final time. Then she began unfolding it. The outer layer opened first. Beneath it was another cloth. Then another. Each layer revealed careful protection accumulated over many years. The soldiers exchanged glances. The object seemed smaller than they expected. Far smaller. Certainly not something worth carrying 500 miles across a continent. Yet Anna continued with the same deliberate care. Finally the last piece of cloth fell away. Silence filled the room. Complete silence. Resting on the desk was not gold. Not jewelry. Not government records. Not military secrets. It was a book. A single book. Its leather cover was worn with age. The corners had softened from generations of handling. Faded lettering remained visible across the front. Carter stared for several seconds before speaking. "A Bible?" Anna nodded. Her eyes never left it. Daniel looked equally confused. Around the world, countless Bibles existed. Churches owned them. Families owned them. Soldiers carried them in their pockets. Valuable perhaps. Meaningful certainly. But worth a journey of 500 miles? Carter found himself asking the question carefully. Why this one? Anna smiled faintly. It was the same expression she wore whenever she remembered the old woman from the church. "Open it." Carter reached forward and gently lifted the cover. The pages crackled softly. Immediately he realized something unusual. The margins were filled with handwriting. Names. Dates. Notes written in different styles and different ink colors. Some entries appeared decades old. Others looked more recent. He turned another page. More names. More stories. More generations. Anna stepped closer. "For almost 100 years," she said quietly, "every family in our town recorded births, marriages, deaths, and important events inside that book." Carter turned another page. Then another. The pattern continued. Entire lives preserved in careful handwriting. Farmers. Teachers. Bakers. Children. Grandparents. People who would never appear in history books. Ordinary people whose stories existed nowhere else. When records disappeared, Anna continued, the church kept this safe. During difficult years, families added to it. It became more than a Bible. It became the memory of the town. The room remained still. Suddenly the journey made more sense. Not completely. But more. Carter looked at the worn pages. The names seemed endless. Hundreds of them. Perhaps more. A century of ordinary lives preserved inside a single volume. Anna touched the edge of the cover gently. The woman who gave it to me believed memories matter, she said. She believed that when people lose their history, they lose part of themselves. Sunlight illuminated the pages. Dust drifted quietly through the air. No one spoke for several moments. Because for the first time, the soldiers were beginning to understand that Anna had not carried an object across 500 miles. She had carried an entire community. Cliffhanger, Anna said softly, this is not just a Bible, it is the memory of an entire town. Part 3, The Book That Saved a Town's Memory. Captain Michael Carter slowly turned another page. Then another. The names continued. Entire families appeared and disappeared across the decades. Children became parents. Parents became grandparents. Small notes filled the margins. A harsh winter remembered. A church bell repaired. A schoolhouse built. Harvests celebrated. Losses mourned. None of it seemed extraordinary on its own. Yet together, the entries formed something remarkable. They told the story of people who had lived ordinary lives and expected nothing more than to be remembered by those who came after them. Daniel Harper moved closer to the desk. He pointed to a page near the middle of the book. This handwriting is different. Anna nodded. Every generation added its own voice. Carter looked carefully. The ink changed. The style changed. But the purpose never did. Each person had left a small piece of themselves behind. Not for fame. Not for recognition. Simply so the next generation would know they existed. The realization settled over the room quietly. Outside, trucks continued moving through the checkpoint. Radios crackled. Orders were given. Yet inside the office, time seemed strangely still. Anna reached into her coat pocket and removed a folded sheet of paper. The edges were worn from being handled many times during the journey. She carefully placed it beside the Bible. The woman from the church asked me to deliver this as well. Carter unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat despite its age. He read silently at first. Then more slowly. The letter explained everything. The church caretaker had written that the book represented nearly a century of local memory. She feared that if it remained behind, it might eventually be lost forever. She had heard that American forces were helping preserve important cultural records throughout parts of Europe. If the book reached someone willing to protect it, then the people recorded inside its pages would not disappear. Carter lowered the letter. For several moments he could not speak. The request was so simple. So human. Not a demand. Not an accusation. Merely hope placed into the hands of strangers. Daniel stared at the pages again. Suddenly the names felt different. No longer words written in fading ink. They felt like people. Real people. People who laughed at family dinners. People who worked long days. People who sat in church pews and watched seasons pass. Anna folded her hands together. The long journey was finally catching up with her. Yet there was peace in her expression now. A burden carried for 7 weeks was beginning to lift. I promised her I would not stop until someone understood why it mattered, she said softly. Carter looked down at the Bible. Then at the letter. Then back at Anna. You kept that promise. Anna smiled. A genuine smile this time. Small. Quiet. But real. Sunlight continued drifting across the desk. The leather cover glowed warmly beneath the morning light. Carter suddenly thought about his own hometown in Ohio. He thought about the church where his parents worshipped. The school where he learned to read. The cemetery where generations of families rested beneath maple trees. Every community had memories. Every community had stories. Most survived because someone chose to protect them. He finally understood what Anna had carried across 500 miles. Not paper. Not leather. Not ink. She had carried continuity. A bridge between people who were gone and people who had not yet been born. And for the first time since her arrival, nobody in the room saw an exhausted refugee. They saw a guardian who had completed her task. Word spread quietly through the checkpoint during the rest of the day. Not through official reports. Through conversations. A mechanic mentioned it to a driver. A driver mentioned it to a radio operator. Before sunset, dozens of men had heard some version of the story. An exhausted woman had crossed hundreds of miles carrying the memory of an entire town. Nobody exaggerated the details. They did not need to. The truth was remarkable enough. Captain Michael Carter spent the afternoon arranging transportation for the Bible and the accompanying records. He contacted officers responsible for cultural preservation and historical archives. Each conversation seemed to follow the same pattern. At first there was confusion. Then curiosity. Then respect. By evening, the book rested inside a secure wooden case prepared by the quartermaster. The case itself was simple. Smooth pine. Brass hinges. Nothing ornate. Yet when Anna saw it, her eyes filled with relief. For 7 weeks she had worried about rain. Mud. Rivers. Long roads. Accidents. Every night she had fallen asleep wondering whether she could protect the book for one more day. Now, for the first time, she no longer carried that responsibility alone. As the sun lowered toward the horizon, Carter invited Anna to walk outside. The evening air felt mild and calm. A gentle breeze moved across the fields surrounding the checkpoint. Trucks stood parked in neat rows. Soldiers finished their duties and prepared for supper. Life continued as it always did. Yet many men paused when they saw Anna walking beside the captain. Some nodded politely. Others tipped their caps. Small gestures. Simple gestures. But Anna noticed every one of them. Near the edge of the compound stood a wooden fence overlooking open farmland. Carter stopped there. For a while neither spoke. They simply watched the fading sunlight spread across the countryside. Finally Anna broke the silence. I thought many times about turning back. Carter looked at her. But you never did. She smiled faintly. No. The answer carried the weight of every mile. Every difficult morning. Every lonely road. Carter rested his arms on the fence. Most people would have given up. Anna considered this. Then she shook her head gently. I do not think so. The response surprised him. She looked toward the horizon where the sky glowed gold and orange. Most people carry something important, she said. Family. Faith. Memories. Promises. Sometimes they travel farther than they ever imagined because of those things. Carter thought about that for a long moment. Then he realized she was right. The details of the journey were extraordinary. But the reason behind it was universal. Every person understood loyalty. Every person understood responsibility. Every person understood the desire to preserve something worth saving. Behind them, several soldiers had gathered quietly near the headquarters building. Not out of curiosity anymore. Out of respect. They had spent months crossing countries and witnessing history unfold. Yet somehow the image that remained with them was not a battlefield or a headline. It was a tired woman refusing to abandon a book filled with ordinary names. As darkness settled over the checkpoint, the first stars appeared above the fields. Anna stood silently beneath them. The journey that had consumed 7 weeks of her life was over. The promise had been fulfilled. And for the first time since arriving, she seemed lighter. Not because the road had become shorter. Because the burden had finally been shared. The following morning, a military vehicle arrived to transport the wooden case to a regional archive facility where preservation specialists could ensure its safety. The process was straightforward. Papers were signed. Inventories were completed. Yet for those who had witnessed the journey, the moment felt larger than any official procedure. Anna Weiss stood beside Captain Michael Carter as two men carefully lifted the case into the back of the truck. She watched every movement. Not because she doubted them. Because after 7 weeks, watching over the book had become as natural as breathing. When the rear doors finally closed, she remained still for several seconds. The truck engine started. Gravel shifted beneath the tires. Then the vehicle slowly disappeared down the road. For the first time in many weeks, Anna's arms were empty. Daniel Harper noticed it immediately. So did Carter. Throughout the journey, the weight of responsibility had always been visible in the way she carried herself. Now that weight was gone. Yet something remained. Pride. Quiet pride. The kind that comes from keeping a promise when nobody would have blamed you for failing. Before leaving, the archive representative handed Anna a receipt and a short written statement confirming that the book would be preserved and protected. She read the document carefully. Then folded it and placed it inside her coat pocket. Not as proof for herself. As proof for the woman who had trusted her. That afternoon, Anna prepared to continue her life. The war that had shaped so many years was ending. Roads were opening. Communities were rebuilding. Nobody knew exactly what the future would look like. But for the first time, the future seemed possible. Before she departed, Captain Carter walked with her to the edge of the checkpoint. The same road stretched westward beneath a bright spring sky. The same fields swayed in the wind. Yet everything felt different now. "What will you do next?" Carter asked. Anna considered the question carefully. "I think I will go wherever I am needed." Carter smiled. It sounded exactly like something she would say. For a moment neither spoke. Then Anna reached into her pocket and removed a small folded paper. It was a copy of one page from the book. A page filled with names written across generations. She handed it to him. "So you remember them too," she said. Carter accepted it quietly. Years later, he would still keep that paper among his personal belongings. Long after uniforms were stored away. Long after military reports were forgotten. Long after the details of countless assignments faded from memory. Because some stories refused to disappear. The truck carrying the book eventually reached its destination. The pages were preserved. The names survived. Children not yet born would one day be able to read them. Families separated by time would find connections waiting for them. And somewhere within those pages, the record of an ordinary town continued speaking across generations. But those who knew the full story rarely spoke first about the book itself. Instead, they spoke about the woman who carried it. They remembered the miles. The rain. The uncertainty. The determination. They remembered how she arrived exhausted but unbroken. And they remembered the lesson hidden inside her journey. Cities can change. Borders can change. Entire eras can pass away. Yet memory survives when even one person decides it is worth protecting. Anna Weiss never carried treasure. She carried something far more valuable. She carried proof that ordinary lives matter. And in the end, that was what stunned everyone. Not what she carried. But how far she was willing to go so that others would never be forgotten.